I love what you're doing here because I'm seeing that there's a really nice back door and a really nice front door. And the way that I've kind of been thinking about it is looking at the belief systems that are present and having some curious questions around that, maybe loosening things up, some exposure to other beliefs, and going that way. I don't know if that's the front door or the back door in this example, but the other way that I'm hearing you do that is building up an awareness through education that leads to a new belief system.
Welcome back. Our topic for today is belief systems and sex. You might ask yourself, what do belief systems have to do with sex? And I would ask back, what don't they have to do with sex? Our belief systems have everything to do with how we see ourselves and others in relationship and our understandings about sex. So our clients have unique belief systems about sex, about themselves and their relationships and sex. The question is, do therapists always have to leave their clients' belief systems alone? Is it disrespectful to encourage a shift? And if not, how would you even do that? Let's open it up.
Great questions to start, but you know me, my brain is always going in lots of different directions. And so what I realized, even as I was thinking about those two questions, is what does the therapist believe and how is the therapist holding that space while making space for what the client believes and helping them surface that? So could I cheat a little bit and get off of our plan to answer those questions and back up to the therapist holding their own belief while trying to surface a belief for a client? Because I'll be honest, that's been a thing for me.
Go for it. That's not cheating. That's the real deal for sure.
Okay, you want to hear more?
Oh, so much.
Okay, so I can definitely say that during my years as a therapist, and even when I was not working specifically one-on-one with clients, but doing educating and things like that, obviously, because we're all different, there would be times where I either thought I had a sense of someone's belief system. Maybe I got it right. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I got it somewhere in the middle. But that clashed against my own belief system. And being early in my work, I'm talking 20s, not that sometimes I don't notice some of these things now, but being early in my work, I could feel like kind of this stiffening happening inside of myself. And even a little bit of a war of like, well, wait, what's my job here? Should I correct this thing that I know is not healthy or true from a relational perspective? Or do I stay with the client? And so those questions early on were not always easy for me to answer. And sometimes, even now, maybe I'll get it a little bit tangled up inside of my brain. I have a general direction that I like to go, that my belief systems really don't matter. But there is this thing called psychoeducation. And so getting that untangled for myself is really important. So do you know what I mean when I'm talking about that? Or am I on an island, Martha?
You are not on an island. And if you are, I'm on the same island. So how in the world do you think about the relationship between your belief system and your clients? And I think it kind of boils down to, how do you see your role?
Mm-hmm. So I actually believe that my belief systems have very little to do with anything with the client except me knowing what they are and me saying that if I want someplace to go and explore them, I can have that and it doesn't need to be right now. So being able to suspend and understand, yes, this is what works for me, but it may not work for this other person. I don't have a religion that I'm actively involved in. And some of my clients do come from maybe a Judeo-Christian background. And so while I can take in that they have a belief system that I want to wait to have any type of sexual encounter until I'm married. And maybe I don't hold that belief system. Well, no, maybe. I actually don't hold that belief system. And so what do I do and what is my role? My role is to support that client and have some curiosity about the belief system. So support is not just saying, oh, that's what you believe. Okay. And I write it down because I don't want to be controversial. Support for me looks like asking a few questions around it and just kind of palpating that moment, that content with, oh, okay, how long have you believed that? Do you remember when you first started to believe that? Are there any times in your life where that belief system seems to get in the way of something that maybe is important to you? So the answer to the first part is I believe that my belief systems really don't have a lot of usefulness, and that is not my role to teach people what my belief system is. But I do have a role around psychoeducation, and that's bringing honest education around sex and sexuality to the therapy space to the degree that I know it, and admitting what I don't know or saying, I'll get back to you on that.
What I just heard was about differentiation too.
Well, do all roads lead to differentiation?
Kinda.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I heard you doing essentially what I think of as the third task of differentiation, so let's imagine your client has told you something about themselves. So they know this thing about themselves. They have this belief system that sex is something that waits for marriage. You don't engage in sexual activity before marriage or certain sexual activity before marriage. So that's the first part of differentiation of self for them. They know what they think, feel, believe. And then they're sharing it with you, even if you might disagree.
Right.
So they've done the first and second task, and now you're up for the third.
Right.
Which is to get grounded and to lean in with some curiosity about their perspective.
Right.
And it's so good, this example, because that is the role of a therapist a lot of the time. And whether you're a therapist or a partner or any person in relationship with another human in any relationship, learning how to lean in with curiosity and get a look at somebody else's viewpoint. It's somebody else's viewpoint we're trying to understand. We can't do it while we're engaged with our viewpoint. We have to kind of shift our focus and move over into their culture,
Gold.
That's what I think you just described, and it was beautifully put.
Thank you.
Really nice. Your client is so lucky. In this example, I mean, all of your clients are so lucky for sure, but this example of not arguing or even elucidating really what the belief system is, but getting really curious. Where'd you learn it? How does it serve you? Does it ever get in your way? What's your relationship with it?
Yeah, I think so too. And for me, the advocacy role is also kind of tied into this work and this question. So if I am trying to persuade you to have a belief system that you can't locate any interest in your system at all, who am I actually advocating for? Am I advocating for like another Skye to exist in the world, or am I advocating for this client to, do what I want to do and be able to support them in where they land? And my personal professional belief about belief systems is, in a lot of cases, they're kind of happenstance. They're kind of around, where did you happen to grow up? Who happened to be your parents? What school did you happen to go to? So helping people understand that that's how belief systems are built. I take that kind of side door first by just asking those questions about, what you just repeated. How does that serve you? Where does that come from? But then also helping them see like what the infrastructure is for their beliefs, and that process of gaining a belief is duplicated across different people in different ways. So tell me what didn't make sense about that. I don't know if I tripped up on myself with that explanation.
Say more about how it lands for different people.
So this idea that we're all having exposure to something. And where that exposure hits internally may be different for person A versus person B. But the process of at some point there being enough of an intersection with this concept, that is a process that's duplicated, maybe not the same way, but it's duplicated across individuals. So let's talk about you and I, for example. We both have been introduced to a certain brand of sweets and cookies, right? And the way that we engage and interact with how many of those cookies should we have on any given day? Should we have it with milk, or should we have it with water, or maybe pop? So we've got this exposure to the cookie. We've got our internal kind of who we are, our personality, and then we've got the way that that gets matriculated through our system and what we believe about how many cookies we should or should not have. So this is a very silly example, but let me give you the floor. Ask me any questions. Is it making any sense, first of all?
It totally is. I really like it. It's just cracking me up, which is just what I need. So
I'm glad you like it. Hopefully our friends listening get that too. But really what I'm going for is this idea that I want clients to have some sense that they have a belief system. Let me just say that again, that they have a belief system, even sometimes about things that we don't necessarily notice we have a belief system about.
yeah.
And then what that belief system is and how it got built, because it's so easy to make the assumption that because Martha and I were both at this bakery and we both saw this delicious cookie, that we should have the same response to it.
Mm-hmm.
So easy to believe that. But that's oftentimes not the case. And even when it does seem to be the case, there's often some nuances inside of that that maybe aren't visible to the naked eye, but do somehow work their way back to the building of a belief system or the anatomy of a belief system. So that appreciation that we can hold for our own beliefs and how they showed up, that opens up space to have the same appreciation for the next person and how they garnered their beliefs, the parts that were going back to consent, consensual, like I agreed to take on this belief, and the parts that just happened that you never got a chance to think about, and bam, this is the thing that you believe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much there around belief systems. I find it really interesting, but I think the patience to engage with other people's belief systems can increase. It can go up because you've learned how to be patient with your own belief system.
Mm, I like that. That's lovely. So let's go back to the client. First of all, it seems like you're opening up for them the possibility that, I'm rephrasing here, tell me if I got it right, belief systems are socially constructed.
Beautiful.
As opposed to being a global truth.
Yes.
We have different ones.
Yes.
Would you endorse the idea that a belief is basically a thought you think a lot?
I would absolutely endorse that idea.
Which, if you think it enough and act on it enough, it eventually kind of embeds itself into a system.
That's right. And it's easy in that situation to conflate it with truth.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've thought it so frequently. It's a second skin. It's second nature.
Yes. Particularly if it was something that you picked up by happenstance when you were very, very young. You not only didn't have a choice, you also didn't have a context.
Exactly. Oh, can we just hover around that comment that you just made? You not only didn't have a choice, but you didn't have a context. That statement is like so brilliant and so true. I think I want us to say a little bit more about the limitations of not having a context.
Go for it.
Okay, I'll try. You might be better suited, but let's see, we can volley back and forth.
Got this.
So this context, when we're in our family of origin environments and it's all that we know, and maybe there's always a vegetable, a starch, and a protein of some sort at dinner. And you're healthy enough, the people in your family are healthy enough that you think, oh, we're getting some good nutrients. But you don't have a clue that there's this thing called being a vegetarian or being a vegan. And so the limited context, the fact that you're only experiencing one context and you don't even know that you're only experiencing one context can be, very limiting. So exposure to outside context, outside ways of being, outside beliefs can make us really flexible. But if we don't have that, then we might be stuck without interruption, thinking that one thing that we think over and over and over again. And so the being stuck and the without the interruption is really one of the tricky parts, because thinking the same thing over and over again can actually be changed.
And that is the really interesting intervention that you're doing here by talking about how a belief system is formed and how you think about a belief system. You're opening up the possibility that if a belief system is socially constructed and it's thoughts you think a lot and it isn't a global truth, everybody has a different one, and it has a lot to do with context, and some of it you never had a chance to choose or understand, that implies you could change it.
Mm-hmm. Is that a big thing that you find important in your practice, Martha?
So important. It's really, really important because it feels like truth, and it also feels like the only truth. So then to begin to kind of provoke sounds so judgy, but
I like it.
But really like provoke a little broader thinking about this seems a very important first step. You don't just go in there, rolled sleeves up, and try to change somebody's belief system because,
please don't.
First of all, who's to say mine's better than yours? And secondly, like, whose choice is it anyway? It's none of my business.
Right.
What belief system is most aligned for my client? How could I ever hope to guess that accurately? I couldn't possibly. But I could help them know themselves better.
Right.
Okay. So we've got the psychoeducation opening here and the sort of mind expanding, blowing open the rigid truthness of it. What comes next for you?
I want to stick with the psychoeducation piece for just a minute because I was dancing around there and I'm not quite sure I finished saying what I wanted to say about that. So educating yourself a little, a medium amount, or a lot, I think it really does assist in the ability to differentiate. This is what my belief system is, and this is just honest, truthful information about sexuality. And so don't want to overlook that piece. And again, we're encouraging our friends that we live in the information age. There's so much out there that you can learn, even with a quick Google, that's going to be fairly reliable. And so knowing that, okay, when I talk about safety and a sexual encounter, that no, this isn't judging. This is about understanding what could happen, what could not happen, and do you have all the information, and how does that land with you when you as the client think about, well, this could be the outcome. Well, that can be the outcome. So providing that psychoeducation versus sharing my personal belief system, which is kind of irrelevant in the therapy space, and the ability to have some of that education might help you differentiate as a therapist. Tell me what about that didn't make sense.
That just made sense.
Okay.
It made sense to me.
Yes. So now we're looking at kind of what comes next. So for me, it is this magical question. If you could go into the supermarket of belief system.
That sounds like a very fun store.
It is. And you could leave with any belief system that you wanted. Nobody would know. So I put that nobody would know part in there because I think that sometimes it is hard to detach from what somebody might think if they knew that you were even playing around with thinking something. So go into this superstore and there's all these beliefs. You look around and you've got a cart that can hold anything and enough financial resources to check out and take those beliefs home. What would they be about this thing that we're talking about?
So we're talking about a shop where you can shop for beliefs about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if we bring this back to our sexual context.
Yeah.
So into the store, our clients go
Yep.
shopping for beliefs about sex.
Yep. And you know what? For the sake of ease, maybe we stick a little bit with the analogy that I brought up earlier, where maybe the client comes from a Judeo-Christian background, and for them, a part of that is holding a belief that sexual encounters are only for a marriage relationship. So in this example, they might go to this superstore and look around, and they might see that somebody believes this, somebody believes that, somebody believes this other thing. And they're noticing all these things, and they can try it on in their mind's eye. What would it look like in my life if I believed that thing? What would it look like if I believed this other thing? So they're kind of experimenting and trying things on, if we're going to stick with it, going into the dressing room at the superstore to play with, what does this look like? Now, a really important part of that is, what do you notice happening in your body as you try this ideology on, as you try this belief on? And really supporting people to turn back toward their own ability to know and hear. If we can make it quiet enough, if we can create the right conditions, you really do have something in there that can help you find yourself. So we're trying on beliefs, we're imagining what would that look like, what would the outcome be, how would I feel, all the things. And then maybe we come to something like, boy, I'm looking at that belief system, and there's a lot of love and relationship and respect and commitment. And I'll be darned, there are a lot of ingredients here that align with what I was told and what I've believed. And let me think about that a little bit more. And so we're still following the same process, but maybe if something is loosening internally, and if the client wants to have access to something loosening internally, then we can spend more time than, okay, this seems to be fitting a little bit better. Let's explore a little bit more. Does that feel okay with you? What's it like when I encourage you to explore a little bit more? Does that feel okay? Do you find your body getting tighter? So all of these questions that are really about invitations to see what's going on the inside, that internal attunement that we talked about before, all of those are really important. So that would be kind of the next play, the space that I would go to play with the client.
Wow, I really like the belief system superstore intervention. I'm really glad you shared that. That's so fun.
And anybody who's listening can feel free to have at it. You can take it home with you today.
So it's not licensed by Skye.
It is not licensed. And there's no one of those things when you're leaving the store that'll go off. There's nothing that's going to stop you from walking out and using that today.
I am going to be using that. That's a really good one. It seems to me that sometimes people don't even know what's available in the way of other beliefs from what they have. And so there might be either a little bit of a research project, or you might be saying, well, I've known some people that thought this. What have you known? And then sometimes I find myself even going to like, what if you could make it up to be like anything it doesn't even have to have ever existed before.
Get crazy, Martha.
Yeah, let's get super creative.
I love it.
And see if you can just explore thoughts and ideas that might not be on a binary.
I'll be honest with you. I like that just as much, if not even 1% more than, my superstore idea. Because if you are really creating something, then we know it's coming from you versus mirroring what you saw. So that might be an intervention that I would add along with the superstore idea.
It goes together, really. I mean, it came right from it.
Then I think letting it simmer, this is something that I learned through consultation with you, being patient and circling back instead of feeling like I've got to fill so much in that one therapy session. Even playing with that and then coming back and repeating what the belief system was that we started with and having them say that and go back over. Oh yeah, I got that from here and it was reinforced there. And when I saw people operate outside of that belief system, this is how I assumed that consequence landed with them, which may or may not have been true, but coming back and, can we talk about that again? Can we just go over that again? You surfaced some really important things. And I think it would be worth our time to look at it a second time, see how it feels internally as you're reviewing it or sharing it back and reflecting. And then let's see what happens beyond that. And sometimes, not all the time, you will see that when a client goes back through that same content, you can even see subtle shift in the language where maybe this idea that it is a global truth is shifting just the tiniest little bit, where I learned this and in my family this instead of we should do this. So that can be very rewarding. And even though I think we've all been there where we want to make sure our clients get as much as they can in that therapy hour, this feels like it goes deeper instead of wider.
I think that's a very important point. You're describing not a 3-session course of treatment.
This is not a 3-session course of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think, speaking only for myself as a therapist, sometimes it's really hard to remember that some of this just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good or bad of a job I do, some of this is just going to take a while. So if we're still talking about some very, very deep work and seeing incremental change over many, many months, that's a win.
It is.
When it comes to a belief system, I think we're talking years, not months.
So true. So true. And that's also where we have to grow that skill that it's not about us. Because to see things go at snail's pace that are deeply ingrained in clients can sometimes, it can feel defeating. It can cause someone to ask, like, okay, what are we doing that they mentioned this again when this issue came up? But you're so right. Those things, I like to call them like, what was going on when the concrete set? So if this was happening, if this is a belief system that was put in before the concrete dried, before the concrete set, then there's a big likelihood that they're going to have to engage with that many times with wins and failures around, did I remember this? Did I default? Do I care that I defaulted? Maybe I like that I defaulted to the old belief, but it is a big experiment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's going to require a lot of focus over a lot of time if you're going to change it. That's what I got from that. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm. And it's a worthwhile for someone who is recognizing that the belief system that they hold is boxing them in or causing some issues. It's still a worthwhile endeavor because every step that you take along the way, it can inform the process. It's not the kind of thing that you have to wait until you get to the end to be able to enjoy to any degree. You can enjoy even some of these smaller steps along the way. So what are some of the beliefs that you've seen for clients that you feel like cause problems?
Oh, so many beliefs. The first one that comes to mind is sex is not a thing we discuss. That's a belief system that people learn very early at the dinner table. We never talk about sex, even though we see stuff about it in the media. We see, how can it be that it's something that I see in TV shows that we never ever discuss?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one.
Yeah, I'd say that's a big one. Another one that I see is it's not sex if it's not penis and vagina penetrative sex.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big belief system that I would kind of say, across the board, I've seen people of different ages. I couldn't pinpoint and say, oh, it's only my clients who are over 50 or over 60 that have that belief system. It's people even in their late teens that have heard that. So that would be one of the big ones that comes to mind. So for the one that you mentioned, that we don't talk about sex or it's wrong to talk about sex, how do you help people pay attention to that and get curious about if that is a belief system that they want to hold on to?
Well, I think it's a fun example for somebody who's not entirely comfortable talking about sex to start exploring with. It's kind of an entry-level belief system.
Right.
Compared to some. Like there are some belief systems that are super tough to shift. But if you're working with a client who's having some distress as a result of something about sex,
Right.
then it's going to benefit from sharing with somebody. So I think just depathologizing whatever they're experiencing, helping it be a positive experience, not a punitive experience. I'm not going to judge them no matter what they tell me. I'm going to validate and normalize and see if I can reduce any shame that might be lingering around that. And then ultimately, they've defined for themselves the change they want to experience because they're distressed about sex. That leads very seamlessly into, so I want to talk to you about sex, even though it's excruciatingly difficult for me. Yeah. But there are some harder ones, things that are based in religious thought or things that are based in our ideas of how families function,
Right.
or that have to do with entitlement. I'm thinking about desire discrepancy just because it's one of my areas of specialty. So I'm thinking about somebody who feels like I'm entitled to have sex when I want to have sex. And it's my partner's duty to give that to me. Super understandable that you would believe that if you were raised to believe that.
Right.
And then another side of that kind of a situation might be somebody who believes that it's their duty to provide sex.
Right.
Even though they experience unwanted pain with sex, or even though they don't get any enjoyment whatsoever out of sex, and it's not a neutral experience. It's unpleasant for them in some way, shape, or form. So those kinds of things, I think, are stickier and difficult to start to shift.
I would agree with you. And I think that goes back to something that we were talking about in another podcast about consent and talking about psychoeducation and belief systems. And so something like that is absolutely a subject that I would have an interest in doing some psychoeducation. Like you said very succinctly, pain kills desire. Is that your quote? Or something like it? So that piece of psychoeducation in an entitled belief system or a person who feels like they owe that is critically important to have that information. And so you start doing the math. Oh, every time I have engaged in unwanted, painful sex, I have been moving myself further and further away from something that both my partner and myself want. So that's not about me sharing a belief system. That's about me giving some psychoeducation. So this is a really great example to kind of go back around to and say, what's the difference between those two?
Yeah. And from the partner perspective there, when the higher desire partner realizes that either both things kill sex pain, and pressure. So when the higher desire partner begins to realize, oh gosh, every time my partner has unwanted pain with sex, it is shooting me in the foot for the sex that I want.
Right.
That's what turns the tide for me in a desire discrepancy case usually, is when that aha moment comes. Like, oh, I need to partner around consent and protect my partner from having unwanted pain with sex, protect my partner from experiencing pressure, whether it's coming from me or whether it's coming from within them. I need to help my partner have a positive experience so that the possibility begins to exist in real life that I might get what I want eventually, possibly.
I love what you're doing here because I'm seeing that there's a really nice back door and a really nice front door. And the way that I've kind of been thinking about it is looking at the belief systems that are present and having some curious questions around that, maybe loosening things up, some exposure to other beliefs, and going that way. I don't know if that's the front door or the back door in this example, but the other way that I'm hearing you do that is building up an awareness through education that leads to a new belief system potentially. And that new belief system can do the work of navigating that old belief system. So it's not a lecture. It's a little psychoeducation. It's not even heavy on the what do you believe, because we do need to have more than one way to approach things. But it's exposure to new information. And then as that person experiences like, oh, wow, that encounter, was positive. That went really well. We were both aligned and having fun and all of the good things. In that process, you are building up a belief system that can on its own begin to challenge old belief systems that maybe no longer serve. So I am all over kind of this 2-entry approach that you're bringing to the surface here. Nicely done.
You tied that up so beautifully.
Yay.
And it's tied up for now. So belief systems, what do we want to leave our listeners with?
What do we want to leave our listeners with? Okay. Pick me. I might have something here. When you work with clients around sex and sexuality and all things adjacent, you will likely run into a client's belief system. Even if that client is not naming it as a belief system, it's okay to have your ears listening for something that walks like a duck, talks like a duck, probably is a duck. So belief systems are present. They're relevant. You might need to help a client drill down and be able to articulate what that is. But here's the good news. There's usually good news. I bet you've done it before in another domain.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are transferable skills.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really nice ending note.
Should we say goodbye to our friends until next time then?
Sounds like time.
All right. Take care, everybody. I hope we see you the next time.
So I want to tell you that I've got a free series about therapeutic goal setting that you can sign up for right now. It doesn't cost anything, and it's based on my observations from consulting groups for lots of therapists. Getting crisp on goals can make all the difference. So you'll see me in some video role plays landing the goal setting intervention and also unpacking what I'm thinking about in those situations so that you can hopefully take that information and put it into practice yourself. All the details are in the show notes.
Okay, friends, you've just listened to Martha and I talk not just about goal setting, but some of our own personal stories and what we bring personally and professionally to our work. If any of what I showed up with today resonates with you, you can find me at workwithdrskye.com. My coaching practice offers practical and relational support. I'd love to hear from you. Again, that's workwithdrskye.com.